Got it. Okay. Let me just get out of the screen really quick here. Nice. Emily's on. How you doing, Emily? Ellie? Okay, perfect. Well, I hope you guys are doing well. I feel like it's been a while since I've hopped on the call. I think it's been about 2 weeks. I was just happened to be out on the those last 2 Thursdays. But I appreciate you guys hopping on and giving me a little bit of a platform here to just kind of talk about the market and kind of talk about what's going on with it. I don't know if you guys saw, but recently in the news, it came out that the consumer price index, essentially the inflation rate, was at a larger than expected 9.1%. Okay. Now, rising inflation is a negative thing for the bond market. Essentially, what the CPI is, the consumer price index, it's just the cost of everything, right? It shows the cost that everything is going up. And when mortgage bonds, and let me kind of show you guys the mortgage bond market here. I don't know why this is giving me problems here. Give me one sec. Let me just delete this. Okay, there we go. This is basically what determines long-term interest rates. It's what the cost of the bond is that's being traded on the secondary market. And so when the price of this bond, like for example, today, this coupon is the 4.5% 30-year fix. It's down 31 basis points. So the consumer price index came out much higher than expected, has a negative impact on bonds. Why do you guys think that is? It basically shows that, well, for example, every note that is written, let's say it has a 5.5% 30-year fixed rate, right? That is being purchased by somebody, some investor, somewhere, right? And so if you're lending money out at a 5.5% rate, and the cost of everything around you is up 9%, do you think you're making a ton of money on the money that you're lending out? Right? It doesn't quite equate. So that's why these inflation numbers that are coming out are a negative towards the bond market and a negative towards interest rates. So interest rates are up right now. And potentially until the Fed can get really a grasp on this inflation, they're going to continue to rise. I know one of the common questions that you guys probably always get asked is, where are interest rates at right now? Which, to be honest with you, even as a lender, I don't talk about rate as much as you guys probably think. That is not what I want our buyers focused on. Okay, we look at payment, we look at the motivation, the purpose, the benefit of home ownership. But for today, just because I know you guys are curious, looking at rates, and I was looking at also some competitors right now, the average interest rate for someone with about one buy down point, and this is someone with probably pretty good credit, maybe 5% down. This is a $500,000 purchase price. You're looking at somewhere around 6.25% with about one buy down point. You can get down into the fives with about 2% buy down. Okay. One of the competitors that I checked with was Quicken, because that's someone that a lot of consumers look at, and they're currently at a 5.75 with 2.125 points, 2 1/8 points, right? So it's getting a little more expensive to lend. But what is one of the reasons why right now is actually a benefit for our buyers to purchase?
Hey, Josh.
Yeah.
Are you saying in that example that they don't get the 5.75 unless they do the 2 point?
Unless they're using some buy down costs, correct?
So they have to put the buy down in to get to 5.75.
Right.
Woo.
Exactly. But what's happening here with rents, guys? The last 12 months, rents are up 5.8%. Is it getting any cheaper to rent a home? It's not, right?
Nope.
So I think what we really need to get better at, and I know that I'm having this conversation week in and week out, day in and day out, is kind of reiterating the benefit, the long-term benefit of real estate investment, right? That's just, I think we just need to get really, really good at that to be able to explain to these folks that, look, interest rates will come back down. Rents, I don't see, I don't see those coming down. Ron, I know you were you guys still doing your property management during the last recession?
We started in 2012.
So kind of as we were kind of creeping out of that, right?
Yeah.
Were the rents going down when home prices were down?
They actually went up.
They went up, right?
Yeah. So what happened is people were leaving their houses, losing them, and they were going into rentals, and it put a lot of pressure on the rental market, and rents went up since that point. So we've had 10 years of rents going upwards.
Right. And so John, your reaction there, I mean, historically, interest rates really aren't high, for a fixed rate mortgage. Now, I know that is what the media is pushing to a lot of our clientele. We're really having to battle against what is being put out there, the content that's putting out there. But from a historical standpoint, interest rates are pretty average, on par with what they've been. Now,
When I got my
obviously,
license in 2017, when I signed up with Ron, if I remember correctly, my first buyer purchased in November of 2017. And I want to say that, if I remember correctly, interest rates were like 5.5, I think, in the fall of 2017. Because I was
right,
just learning, so it kind of sticks between that time frame. I know 5% was, it was floating around at that time frame. I don't remember the exact number, but that was two buyers kind of back to back between fall and spring of 2018, and those numbers were kind of floating around. The impact to the current folks is they're not thinking like us. They're not thinking back to 5 years ago and it was like no big deal. They're thinking, oh my God, 5%, but we only had 2 and 3% for what? Was it a full 12 months?
yeah, it was like a year and a half.
A year and a half of that,
Yeah.
but we've always had the other interest rates. So,
Right.
you missed the sale basically.
Right. And so exactly that's what we have to put our sales hat on, right? And it's not even to me a sales pitch when I'm talking to these folks and explaining the benefit of home ownership, why now is a good time. It's what I truly believe. I think coming from and seeing the frustration from a lot of our buyers in 2020 and 2021 that were having to cut just enormous checks to be able to get their offer accepted, right? They were having to have appraisal gap coverages. It was highly competitive. They were having to offer well above list price. Now, I mean, I think, shoot, even with Home Buyers Realty, I think we have 3 contracts going right now where each buyer is getting a seller credit, covering closing costs. They didn't have to overbid on the house. They got their offer accepted. They're saving a lot of their cash they were going to use for the down payment because they're getting some of that seller credit, and they're able to buy the home, and maybe they're going to do some painting and fix some cabinetry and redo the floor. So it's actually, and no, it sounds so counterintuitive because interest rates have gone up in the last couple months, but it's made it a lot easier for our buyers to get into these homes. And there will be opportunities for us to reduce that monthly payment down the road. It's going to, we're going into a recession. The Fed, we're probably not hitting peak inflation until the fourth quarter, which is going to mean interest rates potentially still have the ability to go up. So that is something that we can still kind of make that point to our buyers that are hesitant or, slowly trying to dip their foot in the water, but they're not really going after it. Have some urgency, like, hey, let's get in now. I don't see home prices dramatically falling off. What are you guys seeing on that front? Do you see home prices continuing to fall? Do you think we're getting more of a stable market as far as price is concerned?
I know I have a client right now that has asked me to drop his price significantly. However, the conversation about where to price it on the front side happened multiple times. I talked about it. We reviewed it. We looked at the comps. I said, this is ghost material now. His choice was, well, let's just see what happens. Well, guess what? It's barely been a week, and the next door neighbor put their house up for 90 grand lower. bigger house, built the same, they're exactly the same age, almost identical conditions. And now he's like, what was I thinking? I'm like, well, now you've been on the market 2 weeks at the high price. You look like you overpriced it. And now what do we have to do is lower it. So I don't know if overall prices are coming down. I think there's a lot of people who just don't want to believe they missed the window. And so
Right.
they're going to just take one more shot and gamble. But the effect upon their home is damaging. You just lowered your house 100,000. That means you tried to jack somebody, is what the perception is.
Right, right. Where do you guys think? Where do you guys see house prices in the next 6 months? Do you feel like there's going to be a dramatic drop off, or do you think it's going to be something that kind of levels out? I'm actually curious on your perspectives on that. I know you guys are, want some loan questions, and we can get to that, but I'm also curious as far as to make sure that I'm giving the right rhetoric to our buyers. What do you guys see, Ron? Or
I see an accumulation of properties starting to hit the market. And, we're having our people that are putting houses on the market. The problem that we're facing is we're not selling that inventory quick enough. So, let's say we add 5 people on today. We sell 2 of those homes. That means 3 carry on the next month. Now we add another 5. We sell 2. That means now we're carrying 6 more onto the next month. And we're starting to see the accumulation of a lot of properties hitting. And so the inventory is dramatically increasing quite a bit. Teresa, can you pull up some of the documentation that you and I have been putting together for our sellers? And what we noticed tremendously was March, we saw, we had 0.5 months of inventory just in Tracy. Now we're closer to 3 months of inventory. I mean, if you think about it, that's a 6 times increase, right? Going from 0.5 to 3 months. That's a lot of inventory that we increased. So we're starting to see this rise and rise and rise. And as people are starting to put their homes on the market, now we're starting to see a lot of people that are starting to we're starting to see a lot of people that are starting to like, I need to get ahead of this. So, like, I'm putting together a seller's packet for our sellers, and I'm using the Wayne Gretzky quote. You want to get ahead of where the market's going, not chase it, right? Wherever the puck is going to is where you want to go to. You don't want to go where the puck was. And a lot of people are going to where the puck was. They're looking in the rear view mirror going, well, my neighbor sold back in March for, let's say, 800. I think I should be at 805. That's not realistic today, right? The market's starting to trend downward. So you want to get ahead of that way beforehand. And what we're starting to see is the smart people are doing that. The ones that aren't doing that, they're chasing the market down, and they're frustrated because the market's going down faster than they can do their price reductions.
Right. So it's still a little bit of lagging from the expectation of where the market was a few months ago as well, that having to kind of correct those expectations for some of those sellers, right? But for our buyers, because that's a common thing that we get on the buying side, right? Hey, I kind of want to wait. I think prices are going to continue to drop. How much? We don't know, right? So let's just say, let's do a comparison here, because we can see rates continuing to climb, right? So if we have an $800,000 purchase, and let's say the borrower's putting down, let's just do the 20%. So they have a $640,000 purchase price. And let's say they're taking out a rate where they don't want to use a ton of buy down, and that's one of the things that I am preaching is like, hey, look, I wouldn't spend a ton of extra cash buying down a rate with the anticipation within the next potentially 12, but let's just say 24 months, you'll have an opportunity to refinance. So let's say someone takes kind of a middle of the road rate right now. Maybe they're at like 6.25, 6%, let's say. Principal and interest payment would be $38.37. Now, let's say that same house right now that's listed at 800,000. I don't know, Ron, what would you say would be a reasonable reduction on that price if there was going to be a reduction from 800,000 in that same house 2 months from now? What do you think possibly it could sell for 3 months from now, for the folks that are saying, hey, I want to wait?
I'm going to say probably 30 35,000.
Okay, so we'll go let's just say 770, right?
Yeah.
20% down. So now their loan amount's 616 as opposed to 640. We've kind of done this already, but just now let's say that in those 3 months, interest rates are up to a 699, 4,094. Their payment goes up almost $200. Let's say 6.5, even not even that dramatic of an increase. 38.94, $60 more per month they're going to be paying, even with a price reduction on that same house. So in those sort of numbers, as far as obviously there's a certain point where if you're buying a house for 500,000 or 900,000, interest rate's not going to make a big difference. But something like this, that's more realistic, a $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 price reduction, but interest rates continue to climb. Are they really saving from a monthly payment standpoint? No, right? And that's what 95% of the buyers that I'm talking to are concerned about, is just, what is my monthly payment? Can I afford, I want to buy a new house. Can I afford it within my budget?
Hey, Josh, can you
Yep.
keep that same example you have right there on the screen now
Uh-huh.
and pretend that you're going to do a buy down from that interest rate from this where you are now? So for where you are now, pretend like, okay, let's take this interest rate that's here now and emulate what a buy down might look like. What would the interest rate look like if they bought down by 2% or whatever the number is you want to
Yeah,
use?
so let's say, for example, in right now, if they were to buy that 2% down, it was 6.5. So at 38.94, a 2% buy down would be essentially 2% of this loan amount, right? So 2% of 616, which is 12K, that's $12,000 of their money, of their savings or whatever they're pulling their money from, right? Interest rate goes down, let's say that 5.625, we could probably get 5.5 maybe. So 35.46. So that's a monthly savings of 38.94, 35.46, $348 per month.
Sweet. And I asked that question because I've been practicing that in my conversations when people say, I think I'm going to wait, I think I'm going to wait till the prices drop. Your first example is what they say, what they think they know. Then I say, the only way that's going to happen is if you have an interest rate that's favorable to you. So you're going to have to buy it down. Now, how are you going to do that? If you ask for a lower price and you get the lower price, it's really tough to get the lower price and the seller credit. You're better off saying, let me adjust my price point, just say, forget about the price. I'm going to be here 20, 10, 15 years and talk about the buy down, put the turn money into the turn, and you can go down by this dollar amount, compare that number to what you would have paid had you bought a while ago, but you keep skipping it. So I know it sounds like a bunch of jibber jabber, but those are the kind of conversations I find myself having.
Yeah, and it's all about that particular client too. What's their long-term goal for the home? How long do they plan? The time frame, like you mentioned, are they going to be there 5, 7, 10 years? Right. So even in this example, if we were to do a 2% buy down, they had to shell out an extra $12,000 of closing costs, or maybe they got that covered by the seller. But from the monthly payment standpoint of $348, it would take them 35 months, right? 35 months to make up, almost 3 years basically, to make up for that 12,000 initial investment that they put for that interest rate. Now, in my opinion, we will be able to refinance them before that three-year period. So it doesn't always make the most sense to spend that money. But of course, if their monthly budget is their concern, then you got to kind of find that happy medium for them. But yeah, there's a lot of ways that we can work these deals out. A lot of ways we can find benefit and get folks motivated to realize, like, hey, you know what? This is a good time now. This is a good time where there's less competition. I can maybe get some seller credit from the seller of someone that's sitting there for the market for 2-3 weeks and is probably coming up on a price reduction, and have the benefit of knowing, you know what? I'll be able to reduce this interest rate down the road, but I want to get into this house without competing against 15 or 20 other offers.
And this is where having great relationships with your lender, you guys are on the same page, saying the same thing, working together to get this done makes a world of difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We just had one go into contract on Monday, I was actually going up against, I think I was competing against Golden One Credit Union. And we know how the Quicken Loans, the credit unions, right? They aren't professional purchase lenders. Like we're in this to support your business. We're in this to close on time, to find ways to make it work. I got the address. I looked up the property tax on this particular home and ran it through the desktop underwriting system. They happened to be putting 20% down, and we got a property inspection waiver. We did not have to have an appraisal done. Golden One Credit Union didn't offer that because they're probably not even selling it to Fannie Mae. I don't know what they're doing on their end as a bank, but that was kind of the number one. That's what helped the buyer get their offer accepted, was the fact that we could close quick. We can close really quick right now if there's no, especially if there's no appraisal. Even if there is an appraisal needed, I mean, if you guys need it, if we need to do like a sub 20-day close, I mean, let me know. We will put it on the top of the priority. We've got a ton of underwriters that we staffed up during the busy time. And so they're needing files. Like, we can push loans out really, really quick for you guys if you need it. Just to kind of.
Josh, what are you hearing of when you think rates will come down for refinancing? If they bought today, when can I refinance?
I'm quoting most folks just to be conservative. I think within 12 to 18 months.
Okay.
I think it's a very, very temporary payment that they're paying right now. I think once we get past that peak inflation, recession looming hits in, and historically we've shown on past calls that during a recession, that's a positive thing for interest rates. Once inflation kind of gets under control, hopefully, it looks like the Fed's probably going to do another rate increase. That's looming. So that, the last time the Fed did that, remember we had that day or two where the bond market reacted positive to that. They said, okay, good, we're getting this inflation thing under control. The Fed's being aggressive. Mortgage rates got a little bit better for a couple of days. So, I think 12 to 18 months is a pretty conservative, hopefully it's sooner, but I think that's a pretty conservative estimate on when we can start seeing a decrease and get these folks into lower rates and lower payments.
So if the Fed goes 0.75 basis, I keep hearing rates will improve a little bit. If they go 100, it's going to get worse.
I've seen the 100 number thrown out there, and I still think that could be a positive for mortgage rates, hopefully.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to take the screen over real quickly, and I'm going to show you some stuff that we're
working on. Do I have to
on.
do anything with that?
Yeah.
Oh, you got it. Okay, cool.
Yep. So I went on a listing appointment yesterday, and the sellers basically fired their friend who was, their agent, and just because they didn't have data, they didn't have knowledge, and this is what the seller wants. I ask a tough question, can you answer it? If you don't know, I got to move on from you. Now, this is a friend that their friendship just went sour because this person couldn't answer the tough questions. So everything that he asked, I was already prepared. I sent them emails. Here you go, done. Research this. We're talking about pricing his home. I think he's still 20,000, maybe 30,000 over where he should be. But I had to have the data to back it up. So this comes from Trend Graphics, and we just pulled Livermore, and you could see here, where things are at. For sale, sold, and pending. Look where the pendings are at. Look where the for sales are at, and look what the solds are at. These numbers are very different, right? Where compared to March, it was pretty basic. But now you're starting to see there's a change right now going on. Here's the big change. Months of inventory based on closed sales. And here's the problem with closed sales. We're looking in the rear view mirror. Now, remember, most of you guys were complaining about a year and a half ago. The appraisers were using closed sales, but you had to offer 20, 30, 40, 50,000 over asking just to get your contract accepted. You were looking in the rear view mirror. Guess what sellers are doing today? They're looking in the rear view mirror. And we're having to say, you can't look in the rear view mirror, look what's ahead of you, because that's where the market's going. It's not going up, it's starting to go down or a little sideways. So we have to have this conversation. I can't use this document anymore other than to show them, look how quickly this has gone up and that we peaked right around here. That's the only reason why I can use this document, because the document I'm really starting to show them now is not even that document. It's kind of this document. What is your percentage of selling? I mean, where is it? Do you even have an opportunity to sell? This person's going to be in that 875 range. And right now we have 3.7 months of inventory or 5 months of inventory.
Hey, Ron, one of the things that we're doing on the lending side when looking at our numbers and just trying to gauge our production from a lending perspective, you know, all the different loan officers here at Summit, and we have our production calls and whatnot. And we sort of threw out 2020 and 2021. Those are just an anomaly type year, right? And we were more so comparing 2019 to now, as far as just production and what we're doing and what we need to do. In comparison to, I guess you could say, you know, a little more normal market in maybe 2018, 2019, what was the average time a listing would be on the market?
You know, I don't know. I'd have to almost go back and take a look.
Would that be like, and as far as being able to compare it to maybe what we're entering now? Because I know obviously,
Yeah.
in the last 2 years, it was,
Yeah,
you know,
it
24 hours.
it was more of a balanced market. Like, you know, you put your home on the market and it was going to take a month to 2 months before you can actually have an offer that you're working with.
Right.
You know, the one thing that we've been talking about a lot is we've just been in crazy times, low interest rates, people bidding way over. But as we're heading just towards a balanced market, it happens very quickly. So I think in 2019, now that you mention it, we were in a balanced market, but it was like 2 months we were in a balanced market. And I was like, oh, this feels good. Enough time, you know, for buyer to get what they want, seller to get what they want. Seller wasn't having to come down crazy and buyer wasn't having to go over crazy.
Right.
Ron,
We were able to negotiate terms, which was really nice.
You talked about that in the meeting. I remember specifically in 2019 because I had a lot more buyers then, and I could go like you were saying, hey, listen, you guys, when you take your buyers out, manage the time. I remember you saying that to us because we were saying we were going to 6, 7, 8, 9 different showings in a weekend when we're fried. We were all saying, man, I'm worn out. I feel like I just got rode on a camel or something. And you were saying that, you know, watch your energy because you got to refresh. We were all, you know, group wise saying that. And you're right. It was much more balanced. If you did take people out, you could go show 5 homes, 4 homes, 6 homes, and not, you know, gosh, there's nowhere to go. As a matter of fact, strangely enough, the person I'm talking about that I mentioned earlier, I took him to go see a new home then, and they were calling me and they had 37 new homes. They're all different sections, you know, this model group, that model group, and they had 37 new homes there. There was new inventory all over the place, in a sense, I should say all over the place, but it was there. And it was much more balanced. Nobody asked me about interest rates. It wasn't even a question. It was, oh, okay, here's the interest rate and how much do I need down? This conversation was not part of it. So you're right. It was much more on the buyer side of it at the time, which is what I had more of. And the field was like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, just to kind of wrap up the call, especially based on the data that Ron just showed, I mean, the more inventory that leads to some reductions, right? That's the supply and demand, right? That's why where we were at in 2020 and 2021, demand was at an all-time high, supply was limited, which resulted in that market. So if anything, guys, like this is based on some of that data as well that Ron's showing, our buyers should be excited about this market and we need to be excited about it. You know, the rate thing, hey, we just went over the numbers. If rates continue to go up, you know, a price reduction of 20 or 30 or 40,000 isn't necessarily going to get them a lower payment. You know, they can catch this on the way down. Like Ron says, look ahead. And I think that's the mindset that we need to have, is to really, really go after these buyers. I know it sounds like it's a biased opinion because that's what my business comes from, but that's the narrative that I'm saying to my folks is like, hey, look, this is a good time. You are not in a competitive situation as you were. Let's get after it. Let's figure this out.
And I think the other thing you could talk to your clients about, price or terms. And ask this question, what do you think is more important, price or terms? Most people default to price because we've been trained that way. But I would take terms every day of the week. And they go, really? Buy my home right now for $1 million. Absolutely, as long as I get to create the terms. Okay, done. I'll pay you $1 a month for the next 100 years. Who do you think is going to win? I will kill them on terms,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Terms matter. You guys have been forced to play the price game for so long. Now you get to use your creativity being terms. What can you ask for? Buy downs, credits. You guys start naming your terms, not price. It will help you guys tremendously. Start
Shorter
thinking
escrow.
creatively. This is where working with your lender. Start thinking outside the box. How can we make this deal work together so the buyer and seller can win? Because the seller just wants to sell their home. The buyer wants to buy a home. Think creatively. How do we make this happen?
Yep, shorter escrow times, we can figure this stuff out. Yeah, great point, Ron. I love it.
All right. Have a good one, guys.
Cool, guys.
Thanks, Josh. You guys.
Yep, you got it. Thanks, John.